You know, the people of Israel have a prophetic foundation, they have a prophetic purpose, and they have a prophetic destiny. They have a hope. They have a hope that a Messiah will return for them because they are chosen. They're not only chosen, but their purpose is to be a light, to be a lamp to the rest of us, to the rest of the world. So they have a prophetic foundation, they have a prophetic purpose, and they have a prophetic destiny. You know, the prophets have spoken about this destiny for millennia. And it's a destiny that it's a kind of new world. It's a community that lives in a place, and there's no suffering, there's no war, no tears, no famine, no death. Death has been overcome. You know, there's pretty much everything that you can think of as being bad or a curse they've been freed from. And when a people live with a prophetic foundation, purpose and destiny, they have a hope. They do really have a hope. You know, it's not woe is me, it's I'm going somewhere, and regardless of what happens to me in my day, in my lifetime, I believe the following will occur regardless. And somehow they participate in the fulfilling and the moving towards that destiny. And my question to myself and to the British people, in fact to the Gentile world, is what prophetic foundation, plan, purpose and destiny do you have? Because regardless of how secular Israel looks, they still have this Messiah returning hope. So what hope do we have? You know, what have we instilled into our children with generation after generation after generation passing? Because we've shared now for some thousands of years the same scriptures, if you like, the same promises, the same prophetic utterances as the nation of Israel. In fact, St. Paul goes as far to say that the Gentile believer becomes adopted into Israel. But putting belief and unbelief aside for a moment, what foundation, what baton, what scroll, what prophetic plan, purpose and destiny have we handed on from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next? What have we given people that is firm, sound, secure, consistent? Consistent actually. You know, what one unchanging, unswerving thing have we handed from one generation to the next, to the next, to the next? You know, God instructed Abraham to do just that, to teach his children and to make sure his children did the same thing, and to teach them what? That which is righteous and that which is just. The foundations of any civilization are righteousness, justice, truth and mercy. And these are the things that Abraham passed on to his children, which he passed, you know, and so it goes on to this day. They pass on those same teachings, those same promises, the same instructions, the same hope, the same framework, the same words that bring safety. You know, they keep people right. In fact, when you read the Psalms, you know, God is our keep, our strong tower, our safe place, all of these sorts of things, our shield, our refuge. And we find our safety, our refuge, our safe place in our obedience to the written word. The written word contains the prophetic foundation, plan, purpose and destiny. And God, in his kindness and his goodness, gave that word to the people of Israel, and they have been sent to the nations, and that word has been shared with us all. And today we have mobile devices, and you can download that word and you can read it for yourself. But it's not just about reading it, it's also about applying it. Now, there are some truths and promises in there which, well, they're all there to comfort us, to encourage us, and to build us up. But we've got to read them, we've got to meditate upon them, we've got to know them, and we've got to apply them. You know, sometimes I think, what if all of those sort of woe is me prophetic words, what if we heeded as a species the warnings given to us by our loving, righteous, holy Creator? What if we could just do that en masse? We'd be living in some sort of freedom and liberty, in some sort of utopia. You know, we'd be living where people love their neighbor, where we have no enemies, in a sense, because we love our enemies. We love ourselves. You know, we wouldn't have all the mental health issues we're told that we have. And we would have a love for God, one God. That's, am I a dreamer? Am I an idealist? Well, in a sense, what I've described to you, the heeding and the application of all of those words, let's take our instruction from the blessings and the curses that are listed for us throughout Deuteronomy. Do this and this will happen. It's a bit sort of cause and effect, if you like. But I think history has proven that to be the case. You poke the bear, you're going to make it growl. I know that for the fact, actually, and it wasn't a bear, it was a terrier. I poked the terrier, it was a Russell Terrier, and it swung around and bit me. And, how quickly blood was drawn from my finger. Anyway, so it's can we heed these warnings? Can we say, I really want to live in the good of those blessings? And I can see my study of the human situation, my understanding of history has shown me that if I choose to, in a sense, obey or live a lifestyle as revealed to me from the list of curses, then I can see that the effect of that, not just upon my life, but upon the wider society and my family, is detrimental to all. So let's, could we just, can you just, and I start with myself. But that's the sort of idealist in me, do all of the sort of woe is me prophetic things, the end of the world, all of that sort of stuff. Can it be avoided simply by loving obedience? That's my thought. Because in a sense, it's the fulfillment of loving obedience that is revealed to us in those sort of, in the stories in the book of Revelation and Ezekiel and the others, where they're talking about the new heavens and the new earth and the city of God coming down with God and making itself known, and God and the city and everybody living together. And I don't tend to think of the city in terms of bricks and mortar. I think of a city as a population, just like a village is a population of people. I think of a city as a number of people. And it's like, part of me is just like, come on, do we have to kick all of, can we just be obedient? Do we have to go through the death, the destruction, all of the hell on earth, the wars, the famines, the droughts, the disease, the pestilence? Do we have to keep on going through all of that stuff? Could all of that be kicked into touch if we could be obedient, if we could teach our children and make sure that they teach their children what is right, what is just, what is truth, and what mercy is? Because if we can't do that, then the flip side of the coin is judgment. and all of the woe is me comes to pass. It's there for our encouraging. St. Paul teaches us, some basic concepts about prophecy and the prophetic lifestyle. Those words are there to encourage, comfort, and exhort, to edify us. So what are we doing? At the moment, does the war in Ukraine, does the war in Israel, is that edifying? Is that comforting? It isn't, is it? Not to mention all of the other wars that are going on that, we don't get reported to us. We seem to get, if the Americans are getting involved, then somehow it gets reported to us. Could we just learn? Could we step in to the shoes of Abraham and learn what is righteous and just, understand what Jesus means when he says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, and he said that it's the truth that sets us free. What sort of freedom do you want to live in? What sort of liberty? We're free to war. We're free to kill one another, murder one another in the name of, oil or uranium or lithium or, religion or whatever it might be. But the basics are the basics. And if you get the basics down, if we get the basics down, we'll change the world. Can you imagine? You've got to imagine what that looks like. You've got to, there's so much stuff going on in the world today, corruption and perversion and immorality, and the list is as long as your arm and everybody else's arm put together. But if we could just somehow dare to believe, dare to dream, dare to be idealists just for a moment, and perhaps do it just for a moment, then we'd see change. We did do it just for a moment. It was self-righteousness, but we did it for a moment. And that moment existed between COVID being reported and protocols being put in place. And we had a 2 or 3 week period where there were no lockdowns, no vaccinations, and the world's governments were all chatting about what are we going to do about this pandemic. Put aside what you believe about the pandemic. There was a 2 or 3 week period where we were still free to carry on, but we were living under the shadow of the news in the media, which I interpreted as we're all going to die. That was the message, wasn't it? That we were shown pictures of people dead in the streets from some sort of respiratory plague, and the fundamental message was, prepare to meet your maker. If this comes to your shores, it's over. And we lived under the shadow of death coming to our doorsteps, a bit like Israel in Egypt. And that's how we lived for 2 or 3 weeks. And in that period of time, I think I'm not the only one. I think a lot of us observed behavioral change. Reconciliation occurred in relationships. Commerce was easier, kinder in a sense, less onerous. Legislation didn't matter so much. People were nice, they were kind, they were good to one another. People went out of their way to help one another. And I saw this sort of righteous living for that period of time. And in that period of time, I had to change the tyres on the car. And I was talking to the manager of the depot. And and so Russ and myself were having this conversation about, how are you preparing to meet your maker, this sort of thing. And I told him how I'd prepared to meet mine, and I'm not sure how he'd prepared to meet his, but And I said, when this is all over, assuming that we don't all die, and that this is, just some sort of knee-jerk reaction to an exaggerated report. I said, assuming that we all survive this, we're going to look back on this period of time, this 2 or 3 week period. At the time we didn't know it would be 2 or 3 weeks period. But I said, we'll look back upon this moment and we'll see whether or not this was all self-righteousness, or really if this was a righteousness which had an entirely different source, the love and the kindness and the graciousness that we were all showing to one another. And then the protocols kicked in and everything changed, didn't it? You can't come in here without a mask. You've got to walk 2 meters apart. You can't do this, you can't do that. And everything changed. All of a sudden, it was almost like, like the militia had moved in and you wore, and yes, the change in our behavior was very, very obvious. But for that period of time when everybody was lovely towards one another, and I look back and I think, we did it. We did it for 2 or 3 weeks. I know that we can do this. It takes some effort, doesn't it? It takes some effort for people just to be kind and generous and loving, and and just to give people a bit of slack. We played by a different set of rules, and those rules to me looked like, in a sense, the heavenly rules, the rules that perhaps this nation might well have been founded upon, or perhaps was never founded upon. Again, take your view. But we revealed something to ourselves, that it is possible to behave rightly and justly and lovingly and mercifully and truthfully. And we did it for 2 or 3 weeks. So you've got to imagine that. And then some, because that 2 or 3 week period, it was far from perfect. But it was an experience. It revealed something to me about the human being. We're capable of so much more. And that was in our own strength, So if we apply spiritual truths to that, and if we were to do that not in our own strength or with our own understanding, but in the strength of having a renewed spirit, in the strength of, in a sense being possessed by a spirit of love, of righteousness, of peace, of joy, of hope, then how different would the world be? How different would it be? It would be lovely. And I thought what we managed en masse for 2 or 3 weeks was good. But that was just a foretaste, in a sense. Life can be, community life can be so much better. But we've got to live by, in a sense, we've got to live by a better spirit, a better way. And I believe that the better way is revealed to us through the teaching that we find in the Holy Bible. I believe that the better way is revealed to us through the life, death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. You can say, oh well, Bruce, you live in a Christian country. I don't live in a Christian country. I'm not convinced that the UK has been a Christian country. I believe that in a sense it's a kingdom of this world, and that through its history its Christianizing influences have come to bear. But I think that's little more than a veneer. It's a bit like a beautiful veneered piece of furniture that's been left in a bedroom for too long, and central heating's been on, and over the years the glue that's bonded the veneer to the timber beneath has has perished. Its adhesion has given up, and so the veneer begins to peel back, and it begins to crack and split, and it reveals just how brittle it is. I think that's kind of where we are today, because we're choosing to say anything goes, and what we're discovering is that anything doesn't go. Anything is, yeah. We've got to have a framework. We've got to have rules. We've got to have something which we all gather around and say, this is right living. This is the truth. This is the way in which we should live. This is how life should look. And oh, well, yeah, the truth is that it was my spiritual encounter could have been with any number of gods, couldn't it? Just think of the UK. We've got King Charles, who's the defender of the faiths. There are heaps of faiths to choose, all manner of spiritual allegiances that could be made. And of them all, I'm not far from Leeds and Bradford. It would have been quite easy for an Islamic spirit or a Sikh spirit or a Hindu spirit, for any of these gods, if you like, with a little g, to have revealed itself to me. But that's not what happened. It was Jesus that revealed himself to me. None of the others. Him. And so I've thrown my lot in with him and his teaching. And it's he that teaches me. It's he that encourages this, idealist, this perfectionist, this... Is there such a word as a utopianist? Anyway, if there isn't, I've just made it up. It's he that's given me this most amazing hope, this prophetic destiny. He came as the King of the Jews to seek the lost sheep of Israel, and he simply revealed more to them of the prophetic plan and purpose, and therefore destiny for that particular people. And he said to the reason we have, and again I use the words loosely because the reason we have a church, the reason we have Christian denominations, is because a few thousand years ago, a group of Jewish men, a group of Israelites, got hold of this message, got hold of this prophetic plan and purpose, this destiny, and they travelled the world teaching and preaching. Most of them paid with their lives to bring us the most amazing message of hope. And that Israelite people, they still have that same prophetic thread running through the fabric of their lives. Whether it's the warp or the weft, it doesn't really matter. They've got that message. If each one of them is a stick of rock, that's kind of the thing that's written within them from the beginning to the end of their being consumed. And we need to join in with such a hope, with such a prophetic plan and purpose. We need to share a destiny that, in a sense, is perfect, So we can work towards it. God says, be perfect because I'm perfect. So what, if he's revealed a prophetic plan and purpose to us which is perfect for today, tomorrow, and its sort of destiny, then we should be working towards the fulfillment of that prophetic plan and purpose, because it's something far, a vision that is far, far bigger, far greater than all of us put together. We've got to, that's got to be our goal as a species, is to work towards that. And sometimes I think we're succeeding. And maybe it's just the ebbs and flows of the human existence. At the moment, it doesn't look like we're succeeding, does it? There's been all these fires and floods and all sorts of things in the media about, men who others say are evil and wicked and are planning our enslavement and our downfall. Well, okay, if that's the truth, what are we doing about it? What are we doing about, changing not just the world we live upon, but ourselves, the world of my heart, the world of my thinking, the world and the heart and thinking of my family, my village, my town, my city, my nation. What are we doing about that? Dare I be so bold to say, if we en masse decided to be obedient to the prophetic promises, blessings and curses, warnings and admonitions and all the rest of it in the Bible, if we dared to trust and dared to be obedient, then you would see the world change. It's going to place restrictions upon some of us, isn't it? Our lifestyle choices. But we only feel restricted whilst we're living in, I think, what St. Paul might call the flesh. Once we're born again, once we're living in and ruled and reigned, in a sense, by the Spirit of God living within us, once we desire to be obedient, then all of a sudden, all of a sudden obedience comes to us, because the born again spirit means, in a sense, that you begin to become more like God in and of your own behavior. You begin to hate sin, perversion, corruption, immorality. And so, by the grace of God, these things are removed from our lives, not by waving a magic wand. It takes effort, perseverance, but it's in God's strength, knowing that when we mess up, He's there to forgive us. And eventually we overcome issues in our lives, and they no longer exist. Now, if we can do that en masse, can a nation be saved in a day? The idealist in me says yes, but it has to be a coordinated effort on the part of the people of God, and God has to be in it. Now, some might say, oh brother, that's impossible. Just dream on. Well, okay, let me dream on. Maybe that's the dream that I need to work towards. Maybe that's the dream I need to share. Some people might say, well, that just looks like a revival. No, I'm not interested in a revival. I'm interested in personal transformation. And my experience is that true transformation is a matter of life and death. A transformed person recognizes something in their lives that needs to be put to death. And then the life of God comes into that space. And that's no longer an issue, you see. What was filled with darkness is now filled with light. And so I think St. Paul calls that sanctification. It's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes effort. But if we all have this vision of this utopia, and we all want to work towards it, and we all recognize that in and of our own strength and by our own understanding, we can't succeed in achieving that plan and purpose. If we can accept that in and of ourselves we'll get some of the way, and therefore we recognize that, in a sense, some of the way is, in a sense, to fail. But then we think, but this plan and purpose is given to us by one who has overcome death, who overcame everything. And he says, follow me. And he says, receive my spirit, receive my life. So all of a sudden, we go from being failures, downcast, to rejoicing overcomers. And then the dream becomes a reality, because we can do it, not in our own strength, in his strength.